Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Porter Says podcast with your host and only host, Heath, of course. Thank you so much for tuning in into this episode of the podcast. So, you know what's funny? First time I've said this in a couple of episodes, episode 17. Only 3 more until the 20th episode, which is probably a bit of a bigger milestone than 10 episodes. But still not quite there. I feel like 30 is a bigger milestone. But it's crazy that I've gotten this far. So I want to thank you again for tuning in, and I want to thank you again for tuning in the previous episodes to the people who have. Very much appreciated. Yeah. Let's get straight into everything so I don't keep you here for too long. Of course, talk about the films that I've watched over the past couple of days or something. I actually have 4 to talk about, but I'll be very brief with them. And then just a couple of bits of news. There's been a lot of stuff coming out recently, so let's get straight into it. We'll start with the films this time. I know last time I started off with the news, but I want to get the films out of the way. So, let's go. First film I watched, Despicable Me 4. Finally finished the Despicable Me series. The main films like Despicable Me 1, 2, 3, 4, not the spin-offs or anything like that. 4. Despicable Me 4. It was okay. I thought it was going to be pretty terrible, considering the fact I'd heard nothing but bad things. I hadn't really heard too many positives about it. So I was very, very, very happy to hear that, not hear, but to watch it and go, yeah, it was fun. Fun enough. Easily the worst out of the 4 films. But I had a bit of fun. It was silly. It definitely didn't feel the same as the previous 3. It didn't, I mean, Gru's always great. Steve Carell always does a really solid job as Gru. Kristen Wiig does it. Not Wiig. Yeah, Kristen Wiig does a good job. Miranda Cosgrove. All the cast is pretty solid. The villain in this film, he's serviceable, but I think my biggest problem with Despicable Me series, the films, of these main ones, is that the villains really lack a lot of substance. There's not much to them. And I get it, it's a kids movie, but there are plenty of kids movies where the villains are just as good as everything that's happening. So, obviously you got Vector in the first movie, who's become a bit of an icon, in a meme in that sense. But then you've got the villain of the second movie and the third one, and this one that just... The villain of the second one, I've already forgotten his name. El something, Dorado? I don't know. He is barely in the movie, and there's no climax with him. And then you got the third film's villain, who you get a climax with him, but he's still... I don't know, his motivation just seems pretty weird. And then, you got the villain of this one, who's just kind of forgettable. I do think that I hope this is the end of this Despicable Me series. I hope we don't get a 5th, because you don't really need one. I think it wraps up everything, everything pretty well. So, Despicable Me 4... Overall, fun film, enjoyable enough for the kids, but there's not much, to recommend story or characters wise, I guess, because adults will get some enjoyment out of it because there's a lot of decent humor for them, I guess, that they might find funny, but it's mostly a kids thing. Karate Kid 1 and 2. My dad and I watched the first 2 Karate Kid films. We're going to be watching the third one soon, probably maybe tonight or tomorrow. I don't know. You guys know my thoughts on the Karate Kid series, like the franchise as a whole. I love the first movie. I love the second movie. I just think they are great 80s films. So very cheesy, dated in some aspects, but I really think what makes the Karate Kid films, like the first three, make them what they are, is the friendship relationship between Mr. Miyagi and Daniel. It's really strong. It's a really strong friendship. You feel for these characters. Mr. Miyagi's such a lovable guy, and and Daniel was just like, Daniel is. There are times where he does whine a lot. He's always been a bit of a bitchy mood, and he's a bit of a hothead. But I think that gives at least something to the character. So I think the fights are great. I love Johnny Lawrence in the first movie. I've really grown to like him in that movie specifically. Like when you watch Cobra Kai, there's much more to his character. So when you go back and watch the original movie, you kind of see what they were trying to do with him. And he really isn't the typical 80s bully anymore. There's much more to him now with the context of Cobra Kai and what they did for his character there. Same thing with Chosen. It's how different he is in Cobra Kai to how he was in Karate Kid 2. I think it really goes. It shows that, it shows how different those two characters really are in the Cobra Kai show. Because in this one, he's almost a bit of a psycho. Like he wants to bloody fight, and he wants to fight Daniel to the death, and he tries to kill Kumiko, who is the love interest of the second movie. We got a guest, or who's supposed to be my co-host, but he's never really here, or you can barely see him. But here's Porter in the Porter Says podcast. He loves the Karate Kid movie, so that's what Porter would say. Karate Kid 1 and 2. And just, obviously I'd given my thoughts on 3 and all that. I mean, 3 is fantastic too. I know a lot of people hate 3, but I love it. Those 3 movies in particular, but just specifically talking about the first 2, I do really think they are fantastic. With the first one easily being just a classic to me, and not full on perfect, but maybe as close as you can get to like a perfect 80s movie, in my opinion at least. What else? I know I'm looking on my phone, I shouldn't. And then, actually, so this is the last one. A movie that came out last year called I Saw the TV Glow. I won't go too much in depth with this one. Hold on. Ugh. Let me get comfy. Let me just move this microphone a bit. There we go. I like to get comfy at some points, okay? Leave me alone. I Saw the TV Glow. It was an interesting movie. I remember like really wanting to watch it because it sounded like a cool concept. Essentially, it's about this kid, or this guy in general, but you see him as a kid at the beginning. But this guy played by Justice Smith, who is a little bit out there in a way. He's kind of a bit of eccentric. He becomes obsessed with this TV show within the movie. So it's a TV show that obviously doesn't exist in real life. Like if you Google it, it's not a real show, but it's just for the movie. He becomes obsessed with that, but then it starts to go into this whole thing where it's like, is it in his reality or is he in that? Like it's a whole. I would implore you to watch it, or maybe just look up the plot so you know what you're getting into. Because it was a very bizarre film, and it was kind of disappointing to me because I was expecting much more. There's one particular scene where it's like this monologue by the lead female character. And it's just like this shot just lost on this character, and she's giving this monologue, and at one point I was a bit bored, so I just kind of like flicked around on my phone, and then at one point I looked up on the screen again to pay more attention, and the monologue was still going. I'm like, you're joking, right? Come on now. But I don't know, I think I expected more from that film. Performances were good, pretty solid. Like, it looks great. Like, visually, I like all like the neon colors they use, and yeah, cinematography wise, it's pretty great. I just think it drags on a lot towards the end, and it's a little bit confusing because there's somewhat like fourth wall breaking as well, and yeah, I found it to be okay overall, but I don't know if I could ever watch it again, or I could maybe give it a couple of years or something, and maybe there's something I missed, or I don't know. It was a very bizarre movie overall, but visually stunning to look at, and well directed. So I would recommend it just for the visuals alone, but in terms of like the story and the characters, it's I'd say the story's kind of like a little bit unique and somewhat original, but I don't know if not everybody would love it, because a lot of people, it was very mixed. The reception was very mixed for it. So I'd say give it a watch if you're into that kind of film. I don't know. It's really hard for there are certain films that it's kind of hard for me to recommend to you, and I'm just like, will this person actually enjoy it? Will it be for them? Yeah. So it's really up to you in the end, obviously. I'm not holding a gun to your head. So that's the films. That's the films and stuff like that. Let's get on to the news. So, again, like I said in the previous one, I kind of want to split up the news as well as more of it comes out, so then I have more to talk about, and I'm going to try and make sure it's still somewhat relevant. So we'll go from what was real. I think it was announced like 2-3 days ago, about 2 days ago. Sadie Sink, who was known for her role as Max in Stranger Things, and she was in The Whale with Brendan Fraser, which I haven't seen, but I do want to watch it for sure because it actually does look pretty good. And I heard a lot of good stuff about it. But yeah, she's mostly known for her role as Max in Stranger Things. She has been officially cast in the next MCU Spider-Man movie, just, simply Spider-Man 4 at this point. We're not entirely sure who she's going to be playing. A lot of people thought she was maybe going to be Jean Grey in the MCU, and it was going to introduce the X-Men, like the new set of X-Men for the MCU. People saying she might be Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy. Who knows? I think MJ would be too obvious, like a new, actual Mary Jane. Because Zendaya wasn't Mary Jane, that was Michelle Jones. So I think Mary Jane would be too obvious of a role for her to play. So maybe this version of Gwen Stacy, because we don't have Gwen in this MCU yet. So I could see that, maybe a different variant. There's a whole multiverse theory going on or something, that maybe she came from there. But I don't know. I'm pretty excited though, because I think she's a very talented actress. She seems like a genuine person. She seems like she's a lot of fun. So I really like her in Stranger Things. I love her character. And I want to see what they're going to do with her in Stranger Things, which that I believe also has been is going to release in October of this year, I think. At least that's what has been said, and I think it's going to be a 2-part situation, which is pretty exciting because obviously this will be Stranger Things' final season, so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, back to So, I like the fact that she's in the MCU. I think there's a lot of actors and actresses that should be in the MCU that haven't been. I don't have a list right now. I should have written a list down maybe, but I feel like there's a fair amount, and maybe a lot of them have been offered and they just rejected it. You never know. Right. We did get first official teaser for the sequel to Freaky Friday called Freakier Friday. You got Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis coming back to their retrospective roles, or to their roles, I should say, not retrospective. To their, I was about to say signature roles, but I don't think that's even what they would be mostly known for. I don't think that's their most iconic roles, I guess. But nonetheless, they're coming back to their roles. I enjoy the first Freaky Friday. I think it's a pretty solid movie. In terms of like a Lindsay Lohan movie, I think it's better than Mean Girls. I'm not massive on Mean Girls. It's okay. I think I said that in the very first episode, so there's a throwback to that, even though that wasn't that long ago. I don't know what to expect from a sequel to Freaky Friday. I don't think you really need it. But I like the first movie enough, and I feel like maybe there is something that they're going to do with it. It's going to release in August of this year. I'll be there. I'll go watch it in the cinema, or I'll pay for it, because I feel like it could either be a somewhat box office success, or it could flop. Yeah, you never know until these movies come out. You never do know. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who love the first Freaky Friday with them in it, with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis, who are like super excited for the sequel, and more power to you, you know? There's obviously dedicated fans for every movie out there. And it is cool to see, you know, a sequel coming. Like, I will say that. So, hopefully they do something different with this body swap thing again. But, yeah, that's that. And the last bit of news. Now, I mentioned in the last one, I talked about Percy Jackson Season 2 and how they had wrapped up filming and all that stuff. Biggest piece of news, another Percy Jackson thing, you know, another piece of Percy Jackson news is that it has been officially renewed for Season 3 ahead of its Season 2 premiere, which is now scheduled to be coming out in December of this year. So my prediction was right. I had a feeling it was going to be December. I don't know what else it would have been. But how exciting is that? Like, I'd somewhat briefly mentioned talks about Season 3, but now it's been officially confirmed, like it's happening. And that's really exciting, because we'll get to see, officially, Titan's Curse come to life on the screen, on our TV screens. And I'm really excited. Even though I haven't finished the Titan's Curse novel, it's still cool to see, we'll get to see an adaptation of something we have never seen before. And yeah, I am incredibly happy for the cast and the crew and all that stuff, and they must be pretty confident that that this series is gonna do well. And obviously Season 1, you know, say what you will about it, obviously, but it pulled in the numbers at Disney Plus. Even if the people who, you know, the haters of that show, they would still watch every episode. So it obviously brought in lots of viewers and views, and most of it was positive, because there's a lot of fans of the show out there, myself included. So yeah, I couldn't be any more happy. And I am incredibly excited to get a Season 3, as well as obviously Season 2 coming out in December. Even though that seems really far away, I mean, considering the fact we're in March right now, how fast this year is already gone. It feels like the year started like a couple of days ago. So considering the fact how fast that's gone, before we know it, Percy Jackson Season 2 will be upon us and for our eyes to feast on. So yeah, that's really exciting. And especially ahead of its season 2 premiere, and before, even with season 2 only just wrapping up and it's in post-production right now. That's great. So how good would it be if they, like in the next few months, or maybe even sometime next year, they renew it for 4 and 5? It would have been maybe too far of a stretch for it. If I'm glad they only did 3. They renewed it for a third one. So I feel like if they went and renewed it for 3 and 4, it might have been them jumping the shark a little bit. So, but I'm glad they've renewed it for season 3, because I'm just, yeah, it's so exciting. You know, obviously, if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry, but obviously I love these characters, I love these actors, I love the world of Percy Jackson. Greek mythology is something I've become very interested in the last year or couple of years. I would very much like to do a segment on the podcast one day of just Greek mythology, but I would really need to do my research because there's still a lot of things I don't quite know. So that's obviously, if you want to see that, let me know, and if you have any facts and stuff like that about Greek mythology, let me know down below. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Porter Says podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I really do. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. Well, here comes Porter to say his last, to say goodbye. Yeah? You say bye. Yeah, no, he's a sleepy boy. He's a sleepy boy. Living his best life. Living his best life. Alright. Well, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. So, have a good rest of your week and weekend. Yeah. See you next time. Take care, everybody. Love you so much.